The city hospital hummed with a relentless energy, a symphony of beeping machines, hurried footsteps, and hushed anxieties. Amidst this controlled chaos moved Sarah, a beacon of calm and competence in her worn scrubs. Her smile, though often tired, held a genuine warmth that reassured even the most frightened patients. Sarah wasn't just going through the motions, she was truly present, listening intently, offering gentle words of comfort, and advocating fiercely for those under her care. Her dedication was remarkable, especially considering her own circumstances. While she spent her days tending to others, Sarah was battling her own silent struggles. A mountain of student loan debt loomed over her, a constant reminder of her precarious financial situation. She worked extra shifts, scrimped and saved, sacrificing personal comforts to make ends meet. The threadbare patches on her favorite cardigan and the worn soles of her shoes were testaments to her unwavering commitment to her profession, even at her own expense. Despite the pressure, Sarah never let her personal woes affect her work. She believed that every patient deserved her best, regardless of their background or ailment. She saw them not as diagnoses or room numbers, but as individuals with stories, families, and hopes. This inherent empathy shone through in every interaction, from the way she held a trembling hand to the gentle tone she used when explaining a complex procedure. Sarah's colleagues admired her resilience and her unwavering positive attitude. They knew she was carrying a heavy load, yet she always managed to greet them with a smile and offer a helping hand. She was the kind of nurse who stayed late to cover for a sick coworker, who brought in homemade treats to brighten everyone's day, who genuinely cared about the well-being of her entire team. She was the heart of their unit, a reminder that even in the face of adversity, compassion and kindness could make a world of difference. And today, her compassion was about to be tested in a way she never could have imagined. While Sarah navigated the bustling hospital corridors, a world away, in a penthouse overlooking the city, Richard stared out the panoramic window, his expression a mixture of boredom and disdain. He had everything money could buy, multiple homes, luxury cars, a thriving business empire. Yet, a gnawing emptiness persisted. He was surrounded by people, but genuine connection felt elusive. Years of navigating the cutthroat world of finance had left him cynical, convinced that most people were motivated by greed and self-interest. Richard had witnessed firsthand the lengths people would go to for money, the betrayals, the manipulations, the blatant exploitation. He'd become accustomed to insincere smiles and flattering words, always wondering what ulterior motive lurked beneath the surface. He longed to encounter genuine kindness, a selfless act untainted by expectation. Driven by this yearning and a touch of rebellious curiosity, Richard hatched a plan. He would shed his opulent trappings and immerse himself in a completely different environment, a place where his wealth would be irrelevant. He would disguise himself as a homeless man and observe how people treated him, hoping to find a glimmer of humanity in a world he had come to see as increasingly mercenary. He spent weeks meticulously planning his transformation. He studied the mannerisms and clothing of the homeless population, learning to adopt a slumped posture and a weary gaze. He traded his tailored suits for tattered clothes and scuffed shoes, carefully cultivating an appearance of destitution. He even practiced panhandling, steeling himself for the inevitable rejections and dismissive glances. The day he finally ventured out in his disguise, Richard felt a strange mix of apprehension and excitement. He was leaving behind his comfortable life and entering a world of uncertainty and vulnerability. He knew the experience would be challenging, perhaps even unpleasant, but he was determined to see it through. He wanted to believe that genuine kindness still existed, and he was willing to risk his comfort and pride to find it. Little did he know, his path was about to cross with Sarah's, and his carefully constructed world was about to be irrevocably changed. Richard, now convincingly disguised, spent the morning observing the flow of people outside the hospital. The experience was jarring. Most people hurried past, averting their eyes, seemingly oblivious to his presence. Some offered spare change with a quick, dismissive gesture, avoiding any real interaction. The cynicism he harbored for so long began to solidify. The weight of his experiment, coupled with the unfamiliar discomfort of his fabricated destitution, started to take its toll. He hadn't eaten all day, and the August heat was relentless. A wave of dizziness washed over him, and the world began to spin. Before he knew it, his knees buckled, and he collapsed onto the pavement near the hospital's main entrance. A flurry of activity erupted around him. Voices, initially distant, grew louder, more concerned. He vaguely registered someone calling for help. Then, a gentle hand touched his arm, and a familiar voice, soft and reassuring, cut through the confusion. It was Sarah. She had been on her way out for a quick lunch break when she saw him fall. Without hesitation, she rushed to his side, her training kicking in instantly. Ignoring the curious onlookers, she quickly assessed his condition. He was pale, sweating, and disoriented. "Sir, can you hear me? Are you all right?" she asked, her voice filled with genuine concern. Richard managed a weak nod. Sarah quickly instructed a bystander to call for assistance while she knelt beside him, shielding him from the sun with her body. She gently loosened his collar and offered him a bottle of water she had in her bag. "Here, take a sip. It will help." He drank gratefully, the cool water soothing his parched throat. Sarah then pulled out a small granola bar from her lunch bag and offered it to him. "It's not much, but it will give you some energy." Richard was stunned. He hadn't expected such immediate and selfless assistance. Sarah's actions were devoid of any judgment or hesitation. She didn't know him, didn't know his story, yet she treated him with the same care and compassion she showed her patients. In that moment, a crack appeared in the wall of cynicism he had so carefully built around himself. Something shifted within him as he looked into her kind, unwavering eyes. He had found what he was searching for, and it was even more profound than he had imagined. The paramedics arrived quickly and checked Richard over. He was dehydrated and weak, but otherwise unharmed. They advised him to go to the emergency room for further evaluation, but Richard, still playing his part, refused. He mumbled something about not wanting to be a burden and not having any insurance. Sarah, overhearing his concerns, stepped in. "He's just exhausted," she said to the paramedics. "I can take him inside and let him rest for a bit. He'll be all right." The paramedics, trusting her judgment, agreed. With Sarah's help, Richard slowly made his way inside the hospital. She led him to a quiet, unused waiting area near the staff lounge. Once he was settled, Sarah excused herself, promising to return shortly. Richard watched her go, his heart swelling with gratitude and a growing sense of admiration. Sarah returned a few minutes later with a fresh sandwich and a small first aid kit. "I figured you might be hungry," she said, handing him the sandwich. "And I noticed you had a few scrapes on your hands. Let's clean those up." Richard ate the sandwich slowly, savoring every bite. It was the best thing he had tasted in a long time, not because of its culinary excellence, but because of the kindness with which it was offered. As he ate, Sarah gently cleaned his scrapes with antiseptic wipes, her touch surprisingly gentle and soothing. "Thank you," Richard said, his voice hoarse. "You've been incredibly kind." Sarah smiled. "It's nothing," she said. "Anyone would have done the same." Richard knew that wasn't true. He had seen the averted gazes, the hurried footsteps, the dismissive gestures. Sarah was different. She possessed a rare and genuine empathy, a willingness to help others without expecting anything in return. After cleaning his wounds, Sarah offered him a blanket and pillow. "Why don't you try to get some rest?" she suggested. "I'll check on you in a little while." Richard gratefully accepted her offer and lay down on the makeshift bed. He closed his eyes, but sleep didn't come easily. His mind was racing, replaying the events of the day. He had set out to test people's kindness, and Sarah had not only passed the test, she had exceeded all expectations. She had gone above and beyond, using her limited resources to help a complete stranger. He knew then that his life, and his perspective, would never be the same. The experiment was over. It was time to reveal the truth. Lying on the makeshift bed in the quiet waiting area, Richard found himself reflecting on his life. He had always prided himself on his business acumen, his ability to read people, to anticipate their moves. But in his relentless pursuit of success, he had become blinded to the simple acts of kindness that truly mattered. He had surrounded himself with people who were motivated by self-interest, reinforcing his cynical worldview. Sarah's actions were a stark contrast to everything he had come to expect. She had shown him compassion without expecting anything in return, offering him help and support without knowing his background or circumstances. Her kindness was genuine, unadulterated by ulterior motives. He thought about the countless deals he had made, the ruthless negotiations, the calculated risks. He had amassed a fortune, but at what cost? He had sacrificed his own humanity, becoming a prisoner of his own cynicism. Sarah's simple acts of kindness had begun to chip away at the wall he had so carefully constructed. He started to see the world, and the people in it, in a different light. He realized that his cynical worldview had been a self-fulfilling prophecy, blinding him to the good that existed all around him. He thought about the other people he had encountered that day, the ones who had averted their eyes or offered spare change with a dismissive gesture. He realized that they, too, were likely products of a world that often prioritized self-interest over compassion. They, too, had probably been hurt or disappointed in the past, leading them to become guarded and wary. But Sarah was different. She had managed to maintain her empathy and compassion despite the hardships she faced. She was a beacon of hope in a world that often felt dark and cynical. As he lay there, Richard made a decision. He would no longer allow his cynicism to define him. He would embrace the kindness that Sarah had shown him and use his resources to make a positive impact on the world. He would start by revealing his true identity to Sarah and finding a way to repay her for her extraordinary kindness. He knew that it wouldn't be easy, that she might be skeptical or even angry. But he was willing to take the risk. He owed it to her, and he owed it to himself. The cynicism that had clouded his judgment for so long was slowly fading, replaced by a newfound sense of hope and purpose. Before revealing his true identity, Richard felt compelled to learn more about Sarah. He wanted to understand the source of her unwavering kindness and the challenges she faced in her daily life. He knew that simply throwing money at her problems wouldn't be enough. He needed to understand her heart and her motivations. Using his vast network of resources, Richard discreetly launched an investigation into Sarah's life. He hired a private investigator to gather information about her financial situation, her living conditions, and her personal life. He was careful to ensure that the investigation remained confidential, wanting to avoid causing her any embarrassment or suspicion. The information he received confirmed what he had already suspected: Sarah was struggling financially. Her student loan debt was crippling, and she worked tirelessly to make ends meet. She lived in a small, cramped apartment in a less than desirable neighborhood, sacrificing her own comfort to provide for her basic needs. But the investigation also revealed something even more remarkable: Sarah's unwavering commitment to helping others. She volunteered at a local soup kitchen, providing meals and companionship to the homeless. She tutored underprivileged children, helping them with their homework and encouraging them to pursue their dreams. She regularly donated blood and plasma, using the small amount of money she received to support her charitable endeavors. Richard also learned about the sacrifices Sarah made to support her family. She sent money to her elderly parents, who were struggling to make ends meet. She helped her younger brother pay for college, encouraging him to pursue his education. She was the rock of her family, always putting their needs before her own. Richard was deeply moved by what he learned. He witnessed firsthand her dedication, her selflessness, and her unwavering positive attitude. He saw her interacting with patients at the hospital, offering them comfort and support. He saw her volunteering at the soup kitchen, serving meals with a smile. He saw her tutoring children, inspiring them to learn and grow. The more he learned about Sarah, the more he admired her. He realized that her kindness wasn't just a fleeting act of compassion, it was a fundamental part of her character. She was a truly exceptional person, and he felt incredibly fortunate to have crossed paths with her. The information he gathered only strengthened his resolve to reveal his true identity and find a way to make a positive difference in her life. He knew that he couldn't simply erase her financial struggles, but he could offer her the support and resources she needed to continue her incredible work. The next day, Richard waited for Sarah near the hospital entrance, no longer in his disguise. He wore a tailored suit, his hair neatly styled, his face clean-shaven. He looked like a completely different person, a stark contrast to the disheveled homeless man she had helped just yesterday. He nervously adjusted his tie, rehearsing the words he wanted to say. When Sarah arrived, she didn't recognize him at first. She walked right past him, her brow furrowed in concentration. "Sarah," Richard called out, his voice slightly hesitant. Sarah stopped and turned around, her eyes widening in surprise. "Excuse me, do I know you?" she asked, her voice filled with polite confusion. Richard took a deep breath and walked towards her, extending his hand. "My name is Richard," he said. "I was the man you helped yesterday, the one who collapsed near the entrance." Sarah stared at him in disbelief, her mind struggling to reconcile the polished, sophisticated man before her with the disheveled homeless man she had assisted. I don't understand," she stammered. "What's going on?" Richard smiled gently. "I owe you an explanation," he said. "Can we talk somewhere private?" Sarah, still bewildered, agreed. They walked to a nearby coffee shop and found a quiet table in the corner. Richard began to explain, carefully recounting his story, his voice filled with sincerity. He told her about his disillusionment, his experiment, and the profound impact her kindness had had on him. "I know this must sound crazy," he said, "but I want you to understand that my intentions were not malicious. I was simply trying to find out if genuine kindness still existed in the world. And you, Sarah, you proved that it does. You showed me compassion without expecting anything in return, and you changed my life." He paused, taking a deep breath. "I am incredibly grateful for your selfless actions," he continued. "You have restored my faith in humanity, and I want to find a way to repay you for your kindness." Sarah listened intently, her expression a mixture of shock, confusion, and disbelief. She couldn't believe that the homeless man she had helped was actually a wealthy millionaire. It felt like something out of a movie, too surreal to be true. I don't know what to say," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "I just did what anyone would have done." Richard shook his head. "No, Sarah," he said. "Not everyone would have done what you did. You went above and beyond, and I am eternally grateful." He looked at her earnestly, hoping she would understand the sincerity of his words. He had revealed his true identity, taking a huge risk, but he knew that it was the only way to express the depth of his gratitude and to begin a new chapter in his life. Despite Richard's sincere explanation, Sarah found herself struggling to process the information. It was all too much, too fast. One moment she was a broke nurse barely making ends meet, and the next she was sitting across from a millionaire who claimed her kindness had changed his life. A part of her wanted to believe him, to embrace the fairy tale-like quality of the situation. But another part, the practical, grounded nurse in her, couldn't shake off the feeling that something was amiss. She looked at Richard, really looked at him. He was handsome, articulate, and undeniably wealthy. But she couldn't help but see the lingering traces of the homeless man she had helped. The vulnerability in his eyes, the slight hesitancy in his voice, were still there, beneath the polished exterior. "I appreciate what you're saying, Richard," she said cautiously, "but I'm still trying to wrap my head around all of this. You said you were testing people, trying to see if they were kind. That feels manipulative. I helped you because you needed help, not because I was trying to pass some kind of test." Richard nodded, acknowledging her concerns. "I understand," he said. "And I apologize if my actions offended you. That was not my intention. I was coming from a place of cynicism and disillusionment, and I made a mistake. But your kindness showed me the error of my ways." Sarah paused, taking a sip of her coffee. "And now what?" she asked. What do you want from me? Richard leaned forward, his expression earnest. I want to help you, Sarah, he said. I know you're struggling financially, and I want to ease that burden. But more than that, I want to support your work, your compassion. I want to help you continue to make a positive impact on the world. Sarah hesitated. She was used to relying on herself, to working hard and sacrificing to achieve her goals. The idea of accepting help from someone, especially someone she barely knew, felt uncomfortable. I don't know, Richard, she said. It all feels too easy. I'm not used to things like this happening to me. She also couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to the story, something he wasn't telling her. Was he truly interested in helping her, or was this some elaborate game, some twisted way of proving a point? She knew that wealth could corrupt, that power could distort people's perceptions. She needed to be careful, to protect herself from being taken advantage of. The sudden shift in circumstances was overwhelming, and Sarah needed time to process everything before she could decide how to proceed. The homeless man was easier to understand than the wealthy millionaire offering her the world. Richard understood Sarah's hesitation and respected her need for space and time. He knew that he couldn't simply erase her doubts with his wealth, he had to earn her trust and demonstrate his genuine feelings. He decided to patiently woo her, showing her that his interest in her went far beyond gratitude. He started by supporting her career. He learned about her aspirations to further her nursing education and offered to fund her studies, enabling her to pursue her dreams without the burden of financial stress. He also used his connections to help her secure a position at a prestigious hospital known for its commitment to patient care and its supportive work environment. Richard also quietly addressed her financial burdens. He anonymously paid off her student loan debt, freeing her from the crushing weight that had been hanging over her head for years. He also set up a trust fund for her parents, ensuring that they would have the resources they needed to live comfortably. But more importantly, Richard focused on getting to know Sarah as a person. He spent time with her, listening to her stories, sharing his own experiences, and learning about her values and beliefs. He discovered her passion for helping others, her unwavering optimism, and her deep sense of compassion. He showed her that he valued her for who she was, not what she had. He admired her dedication to her patients, her commitment to her family, and her unwavering positive attitude. He appreciated her sense of humor, her intelligence, and her genuine kindness. Richard didn't shower her with extravagant gifts or lavish displays of wealth. Instead, he focused on small, meaningful gestures that showed he was paying attention and that he cared. He brought her flowers on her birthday, remembered her favorite coffee order, and always made time to listen to her problems. He also made an effort to get involved in her life. He volunteered at the soup kitchen with her, assisting her in serving meals to the homeless. He attended her brother's college graduation, celebrating his achievements with her family. He showed her that he was willing to step outside of his comfort zone and embrace her world. Over time, Sarah began to see Richard in a new light. She realized that his wealth was secondary to his character, that he was a genuine and compassionate person who truly cared about her well-being. She started to trust him, to open up to him, and to share her hopes and dreams. The homeless man had faded from her memory, replaced by the image of a kind and caring man who was slowly but surely winning her heart. As the weeks turned into months, Sarah found herself spending more and more time with Richard. She enjoyed his company, his sense of humor, and his genuine interest in her life. She admired his intelligence, his ambition, and his newfound compassion. She saw a depth of character in him that she hadn't initially recognized, a vulnerability that resonated with her own. She watched as he transformed from a cynical, disillusioned millionaire into a caring, compassionate individual. He became more involved in charitable causes, using his wealth and influence to make a positive impact on the world. He volunteered at the hospital, spending time with patients and offering them comfort and support. He established a foundation to support underprivileged students, providing them with the resources they needed to pursue their education. Sarah realized that Richard's wealth was secondary to his kindness and compassion, values that mirrored her own. She saw that he was a good person, a truly good person, and that he was genuinely committed to making a difference in the world. She also realized that she was falling in love with him. It wasn't just gratitude or admiration, it was something deeper, something more profound. She loved his smile, his laugh, the way he looked at her with such genuine affection. She loved his passion, his intelligence, and his unwavering support. She knew that their relationship was unconventional, that it had started in an unusual way. But she also knew that it was real, that it was based on genuine connection and mutual respect. She had initially been hesitant, unsure of his motives and her own feelings. But now, she was confident that they were meant to be together. She had learned to trust him, to open up to him, and to share her hopes and dreams. She had seen his flaws, his vulnerabilities, and his imperfections, and she loved him all the more for them. She knew that he wasn't perfect, but he was perfect for her. One evening, as they were walking along the beach, watching the sunset, Sarah turned to Richard and smiled. "I love you," she said, her voice filled with emotion. Richard stopped walking and looked at her, his eyes shining with happiness. "I love you too, Sarah," he said. "More than words can say." He pulled her close and kissed her, a long, tender kiss that sealed their love and their commitment to each other. The broke nurse and the disguised millionaire had found love in the most unexpected of circumstances, proving that kindness, compassion, and genuine connection could overcome any obstacle. A few weeks later, Richard took Sarah back to the hospital where they had first met. He led her to the quiet waiting area where she had cared for him when he was disguised as a homeless man. He had transformed the space, decorating it with flowers, candles, and soft lighting. A string quartet played softly in the background, creating a romantic and intimate atmosphere. Sarah was surprised and touched by the gesture. She knew that Richard had something special planned, but she didn't expect this.